Hi Jikook family, welcome back to Jikook. Today, we are getting into one tiny moment that supposedly turned an ordinary airport check-in scene into something nobody in the area could stop talking about. And the moment itself, Jimin calling Jungkook OPPA. Yes, you heard that right. One word, one unexpected word. And according to an airport staff member who does not want to be identified and whose name will remain completely private, that single word reportedly changed the entire mood around them in a matter of seconds. The staff member says the situation happened during check-in, but has asked that the exact airport and location never be revealed. What matters is what happened in those few moments before the two were expected to continue through the airport. According to the account, everything initially looked completely routine. There was no dramatic entrance, no big announcement, no obvious scene. Just the familiar rhythm of an airport check-in area, staff moving between counters, travelers organizing passports and bags, and a small group preparing to complete the formalities before heading further inside. The staff member described the atmosphere as busy but controlled. Then Jimin and Jungkook arrived. Nothing seemed unusual at first. The staff member said the two were focused on the process, with their attention mostly directed toward the check-in procedure. Jungkook was standing nearby while Jimin handled part of the process. And this is where the story gets interesting. The staff member said there was a moment when Jimin appeared to be looking for Jungkook's attention. He apparently said something to him at first in a normal tone. Jungkook did not immediately respond, so Jimin called him again, and instead of using the name everyone expected to hear, Jimin reportedly said one word: OPPA. According to the staff member, that was the exact moment the energy shifted. The employee described it as one of those strangely quiet seconds where several people seemed to notice something at the same time. Jungkook reportedly turned around almost immediately. The staff member said his reaction was subtle, but it was enough to make the moment memorable. Apparently, Jungkook looked at Jimin as though he had to process what he had just heard. And Jimin, according to the account, did not immediately repeat himself. He simply waited for Jungkook to respond. Now, let's be honest, Jikook family. For most people, OPPA is just a word. But when it comes from Jimin, directed toward Jungkook, in a quiet airport setting, and apparently without warning, that word suddenly becomes the entire conversation. The staff member said the moment did not feel rehearsed. There was no dramatic performance, no obvious attempt to get attention. It happened naturally in the middle of the check-in process. And that is apparently what made it stand out. The staff member recalled that Jungkook responded to Jimin in a calm way, but there was reportedly a noticeable change in his expression. Instead of immediately looking away and continuing with the check-in, he stayed focused on Jimin for another moment. The employee could not hear every word exchanged between them. However, the staff member said the interaction appeared warm, familiar, and surprisingly playful. Jimin reportedly gave a small smile after getting Jungkook's attention. That was it. No huge scene, no extended conversation, just a brief exchange. But sometimes the smallest moments are the ones that stay in someone's memory. The staff member said what happened next was even more interesting because Jimin apparently went straight back to the check-in process as though nothing unusual had happened. Jungkook, meanwhile, remained close by. The employee described the two as comfortable around each other, moving through the process without appearing rushed. And then came another detail that made the story even more entertaining. According to the staff member, Jimin later appeared to say something quietly to Jungkook again, and Jungkook responded with what looked like a teasing expression. The exact words were not clear. But the staff member said Jungkook seemed amused. There was reportedly a brief exchange of smiles before both returned their attention to the airport staff. And this is the part that has the Jikook family asking the biggest question. Why did Jimin say OPPA in that moment? Well, there is no public explanation in this story. The airport staff member did not claim to know what was behind the choice of words. What the employee remembers is the sound of Jimin's voice, the immediate reaction from Jungkook, and how quickly the atmosphere around them seemed to change. The employee explained that airports can become surprisingly memorable because travelers often arrive stressed, distracted, or focused on schedules. So when something small and unexpected happens during a routine interaction, staff can notice it more easily. And apparently, this was one of those moments. The staff member said there was a brief pause after Jimin said "OPPA," not because anything was wrong, simply because it was unexpected. The staff member even described Jungkook's reaction as looking like someone who had been called by a nickname he was not expecting to hear in that particular setting. And Jimin reportedly looked perfectly comfortable afterward. That contrast is exactly what made the moment so memorable. One person seemed briefly surprised. The other seemed completely unbothered, and then both simply continued with their day. Jikook verse family, let's stay with that scene for a second. Imagine an ordinary airport check-in area. People are moving around, bags are being weighed, documents are being checked, staff members are speaking with travelers. Everything is routine, and then in the middle of all that noise, one voice says "OPPA." Jungkook turns, Jimin smiles, and for one tiny moment, the rest of the airport seems to disappear. That is the kind of little interaction that can stick with someone. The staff member said the exchange lasted only seconds. There was nothing extravagant about it. And yet, when asked about the most memorable detail from the encounter, the employee immediately remembered that word, "OPPA." The employee also emphasized that they would not reveal the airport, the date, the exact check-in area, or any identifying information about the people or staff involved. The reason was simple: privacy. The story is about the moment itself, not about identifying a specific workplace or exposing anyone's personal information. During the check-in process, Jimin reportedly remained polite and focused. Jungkook also continued interacting with staff normally. The staff member said neither appeared to be trying to create attention around themselves. In fact, the entire exchange might have passed unnoticed by many people around them. But for the person standing close enough to hear it, the moment was apparently impossible to forget. And there was another detail. According to the staff member, Jungkook's response to Jimin sounded relaxed. There was no irritation, no visible confusion after the initial reaction. Instead, the employee said Jungkook seemed to understand the tone immediately. That reportedly made the interaction feel even more natural. Jimin had called, Jungkook had answered, and then life at the airport simply continued. But for the staff member watching from nearby, it was one of those little moments that quietly stays in your head. Now, Jikook verse family, this is where we have to appreciate the power of one word. Because sometimes a huge story does not begin with a huge event. Sometimes it begins with a tiny change in language, a different nickname, a different tone, a different way of getting someone's attention. And when that tiny change happens between two people who already have a long history of familiar interactions, it can feel much bigger than the moment itself. The staff member said Jimin's voice was calm when he called Jungkook "OPPA." There was no shouting, no dramatic emphasis, just a natural way of getting his attention. And according to the account, Jungkook reacted quickly. The timing was so immediate that the employee remembered it clearly. Jimin says it, Jungkook turns, Jimin smiles, Jungkook responds. Then they continue checking in. That is basically the entire moment. Yet somehow, it is enough to become one of those stories that fans can replay in their heads over and over again. And perhaps the funniest part is that Jimin reportedly did not act like he had done anything unusual. Afterward, he simply returned his attention to the process. That reportedly left the staff member wondering whether the word was as surprising to Jungkook as it had sounded to everyone else nearby. The employee said Jungkook appeared to be briefly caught off guard, but then seemed comfortable again almost immediately. That tiny shift in his expression was apparently noticeable. And for anyone who has ever been around close friends, that reaction makes sense. Sometimes someone says something unexpectedly familiar, and your face reacts before you even realize it. Jimin apparently got exactly that kind of response. Another interesting point from the account is that the check-in process itself never stopped. The staff continued doing their jobs. Jimin and Jungkook continued preparing their travel documents and belongings. Nothing dramatic happened around them. There was no confrontation. There was no disruption. Just a small moment inside a much larger and much more ordinary routine. And that is why the story feels so different from a staged interaction. The staff member described it as something that seemed to happen in passing, 1 second, then another, and then everyone moved on, but the word had already been heard. OPPA. For Jungkook, perhaps it was just a simple way Jimin chose to call him. For the staff member, it became the most memorable part of the encounter. And for the Jikook verse family, well, we already know this is the kind of detail that can keep a fandom talking. What makes this story especially interesting is not only what Jimin said, but the timing. They were in the middle of checking in. There were other responsibilities happening around them. Their attention was supposed to be on documents, bags, schedules, and the next step of the journey. And yet, in that very ordinary environment, Jimin chose that particular word to get Jungkook's attention. The staff member said the interaction felt relaxed rather than formal. That is important because the setting itself was very public and structured. Airport check-in usually has a very practical rhythm. You present your documents, you answer questions, your baggage is processed, you move along. There is not much room for extended casual interaction, so a personal-sounding moment can stand out simply because it breaks the routine. According to the employee, Jimin and Jungkook appeared comfortable enough to exchange that brief moment without making a big deal out of it. Jungkook responded. Jimin smiled. And they continued. There was also reportedly a moment after the exchange when Jungkook glanced toward Jimin again, almost as if continuing an unfinished joke. The staff member could not hear the entire conversation, so they could not provide exact words. But visually, according to the account, the mood remained light. And that small detail adds another layer to the story, because it suggests that the OPPA moment was not followed by awkwardness. Instead, it seemed to become part of a comfortable interaction between them. Jikook verse family, think about that for a second. Jimin calls, Jungkook turns, there is a little smile, then they continue. Sometimes that is all you need for a moment to become unforgettable, and the airport staff member apparently agrees. When recalling the encounter, the employee said the atmosphere around them felt ordinary until that single word. Afterward, it returned to normal just as quickly. That may be the most believable part of the entire memory. Real life rarely pauses for dramatic effect. There is usually no soundtrack. No giant reaction from everyone in the room. Sometimes something meaningful or funny happens in the middle of a completely normal day, and then the world keeps moving. That is exactly how this moment reportedly unfolded. A routine check-in, a familiar voice, an unexpected OPPA. A surprised turn from Jungkook, a small smile from Jimin, and then back to business. But there is one final detail from the staff member that deserves attention. The employee said the encounter gave the impression that the two were deeply comfortable communicating with each other. Not because of anything loud or dramatic, rather because of how quickly the interaction happened. Jimin called. Jungkook responded. There was no need for repetition, no confusion about who was being addressed, just immediate recognition. That kind of communication can make even a 2-second moment feel incredibly familiar. And perhaps that is why this tiny airport interaction became so memorable, not because something enormous happened, but because something very simple happened in a way that felt natural. Jimin wanted Jungkook's attention. He called him OPPA. Jungkook turned. And for just a moment, the busy airport became the background to a very small exchange between two people who seemed completely comfortable with each other. The staff member has chosen to remain anonymous. The location remains private. The exact date remains undisclosed. And the details that could identify the airport or the people involved are intentionally being left out. What remains is the moment itself. Jimin saying, OPPA. Jungkook reacting, that little pause, that little smile, and then the check-in continuing as normal. Jikook verse family, sometimes fandom moments do not need to be complicated. Sometimes one word is enough. And today, that word is OPPA. Because imagine hearing Jimin say it so naturally that Jungkook turns almost instantly. There is something strangely sweet about how ordinary the interaction sounds. No grand gesture, no attention-seeking behavior, no dramatic announcement. Just one person calling another person in a way that apparently caught him off guard for a second. And maybe that is exactly why the staff member remembered it. Out of everything happening around them that day, that tiny exchange stayed in their mind. So now, the entire story comes down to one unforgettable airport moment. During a private check-in setting that we will keep undisclosed, Jimin reportedly called Jungkook OPPA. An unnamed airport staff member heard it. Jungkook reportedly turned immediately, Jimin smiled, there was a brief exchange, and then both continued with the check-in process. Simple, quiet, unexpected, and somehow completely unforgettable. That is the story the staff member chose to share while keeping their identity and the location protected. And honestly, Jikook verse family, sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest reactions. Because when a single word can make someone turn around that quickly, you already know it landed. So, was OPPA just an ordinary word in an ordinary airport moment? Or did it carry a little extra warmth because of who said it and who answered? Either way, one thing is certain inside this story. Jimin said, OPPA. Jungkook heard it. Jungkook turned. And for a brief second, everyone nearby had a reason to remember that exact moment. That is why this tiny airport check-in interaction has become such a memorable piece of the Jikook verse conversation. Not because it was loud, not because it was dramatic, but because it was small, natural, and completely unexpected. And sometimes, those are the moments fans remember the longest. Jikook verse family, thank you for spending this time with us. This is Jikook verse, and sometimes the smallest words really do make the biggest impact. Until the next story, keep the conversation kind, keep the energy warm, and keep enjoying every little moment that makes this community smile. This is Jikook verse signing off.